The ocean had coughed up a monster, or perhaps a god, and left it dying on the shore. In the bruised pre-dawn light of the Oregon coast, the shape was a deep, unsettling purple against the slate gray of the wet sand. Elias saw it first as a shadow that didn't belong, a flaw in the familiar, rugged tapestry of his morning walk. He was a man who had come to this edge of the world to be surrounded by things that were vast and indifferent: the forest, the sea, the sky. He had believed it would quiet the noise inside him, the lingering echo of a life that had ended too soon. He moved closer, his worn leather boots sinking into the sand, the cold spray misting his weathered face. The air was thick with the scent of salt, kelp, and something else, a faint, metallic tang of distress. It wasn't a beached whale, its form too complex, too alien. As he drew near, the shadow resolved into a tangle of immense, muscular arms, the color of a deep twilight sky, coiled around a central, bulbous mantle. A giant Pacific octopus, larger than any he had ever seen, even in books. And it was trapped. A huge slab of basalt, likely dislodged from the cliffs by the previous night's ferocious storm, had fallen directly onto the creature's body, pinning it to the shore just below the high tide line. The rock was a tombstone, pressing the life from this magnificent being. Most of the octopus was still a portrait of surrender. But one arm, thick as a man's thigh, moved feebly, its suckers blindly grasping at the empty air. And then an eye opened. It was not the simple, vacant eye of a fish. This eye was a universe of ancient intelligence, a dark, liquid lens that focused on him with unnerving clarity. It was an eye that understood its own predicament. In that gaze, Elias saw not just fear, but a profound, silent plea. The world, which he had sought for its indifference, had just presented him with a life that depended entirely on him. The incoming tide was a ticking clock, its waves already licking at the lowest coils of the trapped arms. In a few hours, the water would rise, and the octopus would drown, unable to retreat to the depths that were its home. Elias stood frozen, the vastness of the ocean before him, the immovable weight of the rock at his feet. He was one small man against a problem of geological scale. He could walk away, pretend he hadn't seen. He could let nature, in its cruel finality, run its course. But the eye held him captive. It knew he was there. He was no longer a spectator. He was a participant. A wave, larger than the others, crashed nearby, and a sheet of cold water rushed over the octopus's mantle. The creature shuddered, a tremor that ran through its immense body. Elias felt a corresponding shudder in his own chest. He was alone. The nearest town was miles away. There was no one to call. He took a deep breath, the cold air burning his lungs, and placed both his hands on the cold, rough surface of the basalt. He pushed. The rock did not move. It was as solid and final as death itself. Hope was a fragile thing, easily crushed. Elias's first attempts were exercises in futility. He pushed until his muscles screamed, until sweat mingled with the sea spray on his brow. But the rock was a part of the earth, unmoved by the desperation of a single man. The octopus remained still, its gaze fixed on him, a silent observer to his struggle. Its skin, a moment ago a deep, bruised purple, began to shift, waves of mottled brown and gray washing over it, a camouflage of fear. Elias saw the raw flesh where the rock bit into its mantle, a dark, weeping wound. The tide was relentless, no longer just licking at the shore but actively crawling up the sand. The water was around Elias's ankles now, cold and insistent. Panic began to set in, a cold dread that mirrored the chilling water. He couldn't lift it. He couldn't push it. He needed leverage. His eyes scanned the debris line higher up the beach, a chaotic collection of driftwood and sea-tossed refuse left by the storm. There, a long, thick log, the bleached trunk of a long-dead fir tree, lay half buried in the sand. It was massive, heavy, but it was his only chance. He ran, his boots splashing through the encroaching surf, his heart hammering against his ribs. He dug at the sand with his bare hands, the coarse grains scraping his skin raw, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He pulled and heaved, his body straining against the dead weight. The log was a monster in itself, but it was a monster he could, perhaps, tame. He dragged it, inch by painful inch, across the beach, leaving a deep furrow in its wake. He positioned the log next to the great stone, forcing one end into the soft sand beneath the rock's edge. This was the most delicate part. To get the lever in place, he had to get close to the octopus to touch it. He waded into the knee-deep water, the pull of the current trying to unbalance him. "It's okay," he whispered, the words stolen by the wind as soon as they left his lips. He reached down, his hands brushing against the octopus's skin. It was shockingly soft, pliant, and cool, like wet silk over pure muscle. The creature flinched, and a wave of dark crimson flashed across its mantle. But it didn't pull away. It's great, intelligent, I watched his every move. There was a truce between them, a covenant forged in silence and desperation. Elias wedged the end of the log firmly under the rock. The other end, his lever, rose into the air. He put all his weight on it, his feet slipping in the churning water. The log creaked. The rock groaned, a deep, guttural sound of shifting earth, but it held fast. It wasn't enough. He needed more. With a surge of adrenaline, he threw his entire body onto the end of the log, a desperate final act of will. The wood screamed in protest. The rock tilted. It shifted, scraping against the sand, moving just a few critical inches. A powerful wave surged forward, lifting the log and throwing Elias sideways into the water. He came up sputtering, his vision blurred. For a heart-stopping second, he couldn't see. Had it worked? Or had the shifting rock crushed the creature completely? The water receded, a great exhale from the sea, and the scene was revealed. The rock now sat inches from the octopus, a gap of freedom between them. The creature was free. It lay motionless for a long moment, a heap of exhausted flesh in the swirling, shallow water. Elias, soaked and shivering, scrambled to his feet, his body aching with a pain that felt distant and unimportant. He watched, holding his breath, waiting for a sign of life. One arm unfurled slowly, then another. The great mantle pulsed, drawing in water, and the octopus began to pull itself with a strange, liquid grace towards the deeper water. It was alive. It stopped. Half submerged in the life-giving water, it turned its body slightly. One long, powerful arm lifted from the sea, rising through the air like a living question mark. It moved not with panic or haste, but with a slow, deliberate purpose. It moved towards Elias. He stood his ground, his heart a drum in the sudden silence between waves. The arm, covered in a mosaic of suckers, reached him. It did not grab or constrict. It gently, softly wrapped around his forearm. He felt the light, inquisitive pressure of the suckers on his skin, a touch that was entirely alien yet profoundly intimate. He looked down at the arm coiled around his own, and then up, meeting the creature's gaze one last time. The eye was dark and deep, and in its fathomless depth, Elias saw something he could only interpret as recognition. It was a moment of pure, silent communication, a thank you that transcended species, language, and the vast evolutionary gulf between them. It was an acknowledgement of a debt, a shared moment of life snatched back from the brink. The touch lasted only a few seconds, an eternity. Then the arm unwrapped as gently as it had arrived and slipped back into the water. With a powerful surge of its mantle, the octopus propelled itself backward, a phantom of purple and gray disappearing into the green, churning depths of the Pacific. It was gone. Elias stood alone, knee-deep in the tide, staring at the empty space where the creature had been. He looked at his arm, at the faint red rings left by the suckers, a temporary tattoo of their encounter. The sun finally broke through the heavy clouds, and a brilliant, golden light spilled across the water, turning the waves to liquid fire. The storm had passed. He felt the exhaustion in his bones, but the gnawing emptiness inside him, the quiet noise he had come here to escape, was gone. It had been replaced by a profound, resonant silence. He was still alone on the edge of the world, but he was no longer just a spectator to its vast indifference. He had touched it, and it had touched him back. He turned and walked slowly up the beach, his silhouette dark against the blazing light of the new day.